Hello everybody and welcome back to Bearded 40K. We're continuing a look at the Genestealer Cult Tactica for 8th edition with an important update. We've done a lot of videos on the Tactica so far, but the winds of change have blown upon the army, and we had this big FAQ drop this week that has really changed things to do with Cult Ambush, which is our bread and butter, basically, if we're to have any hope of making a dent into some of these armies on the battlefields, the tabletops of Terra. It's something that we really need to look at here. So I had some thoughts today because a lot of people seem to have not noticed that in addition to changing almost all armies except our own to where when they deep strike, they can only deep strike in their own deployment zone for turn one, or that's infiltration, coming in through assault or the drop pods, all of that stuff. Any other army can only come in turn one onto their own deployment zone. We are the only ones that can do the Alpha Strike, besides, say, for example, the Alpha Legion, the Raven Guard, and they cannot compare to us because they're not dropping in things like, 20 Genestealers coming in with 4 attacks each, rending, moving with the insane amount of movement that they can. So the thing is that we need to look at the fact that the change that has come in now also involves power levels, okay? Not just the amount of units that you have on the table versus in reserve, but you now also have to take into consideration power level. So I had some thoughts on this. I had some new thoughts on helping with the new addition of what's basically being called the 50% requirement for any turn one Alpha Strike. So to start, originally you just had to have 50% of your total units that are in your army on the table. If you had 2 squads, you could deploy 2 squads. It didn't matter how many models you had in those squads. You could have 2 squads of 5 Acolytes starting on the table. That would allow you to cult ambush 2 squads of 20 Genestealers each. So 10 Acolytes on the table would let you deep strike or cult ambush 40 Genestealers. That was perfectly legal. You could take 20 Genestealers and a Primus. That only counted as 2 units. And if you had 2 Acolytes units on your table, perfectly legal, no problem. Now, thanks to this big FAQ, there are changes. You need both half of the total units that are in your army starting on the table, and they have to be at least 50% of the total power level of what you have in Deep Strike. So, before this big FAQ, power level only mattered in pickup games. Some of you might have been ignoring it up until now. I had a suspicion for a while that power level would infest matched play, somehow, some way, and lo and behold, it hits us, basically, for the most part. It's both a blessing and a curse, these changes. With the changes to infiltration rules and power level requirements, we're now the best Alpha Strike army in the game. It doesn't make us tier 1, but it gives us freedom until turn 2, where we don't have to worry about defending our backfield or any other shenanigans like that unless you're playing against Alpha Legion or Raven Guard, as far as I know. But because of the new rules, we have to boost the power level that are on the tabletop starting out in order to deep strike our Genestealers. And this is what I think is, when people are looking at this, it's kind of scary. They're thinking that it's ruining the army, basically, because just one squad of 20 Genestealers with a Primus is a 20 power level, and that's pretty big. So we need to have at least 2 squads at least 20 power level combined on the table now to cult ambush that squad of 20 Genestealers and the Primus. So we still have to do the 2 for 2, but we also have to have a match of the power level. Of course, you don't have to take that full squad of Stealers. If you need to shave off points, just know that power level does not increase with every model, but the total amount of what is in your unit, rounding up and down. So to put this simply, if you're still confused, what we're trying to do now with this army is we want to build an army with low points, but a high power level, especially with the units on the table. So I'll say that again. On the table, we need low points that are giving us a high power level, starting those on the table so that we can deep strike or cult ambush our Genestealers So this might seem confusing, but because it's more of a rounding that happens instead of an exact tit for tat, this is worth this many things. It's like power level is rounding up and down. So the odd thing is it creates situations where it's the same power level to bring 11 genestealers as it is to bring 15, for example. So since you have to pay the new power level tax with troops on the table in order to deep strike your genestealers, this kind of thing is more important to keep in mind with your army. If you're paying the tax, you need to be able to maximize what you're able to bring for that. And conversely, you might have to bring your guys way down, 4 or 5 models to be under a certain power level. And that leaves you with, say, extra points that now are going to less effective things than what we normally focus on, which is those cult ambushing genestealers. So this is important to keep into consideration. In the previous Troops Tactica, we talked about a battalion detachment of 3 squads of 5 acolytes. Okay, so 3 squads, 5 men, 5 models in each. So I have an idea here, or something to kind of point out, that if you take just one more acolyte in a squad of acolytes, bringing it to 6 models total rather than 5, for only 11 points, it boosts the total power level for that squad from 5 to 10, just by adding that one guy. So 5 acolytes, 5 power level. 6 acolytes, 10 power level. Having that start on the board starts to free up now power level for you to put into reserve for your Alpha Strike. It's interesting, but adding just that one guy allows you to do that. If you do this in all 3 squads, you just gained an extra 15 power level for only 33 points. So you're at 30 power level for taking 3 squads of 6 acolytes rather than taking 3 squads of 5 and being at 15 total power level. It's a little beardy, but it's an easy and cheap way to up the power level of your units starting on the board, and that'll allow you to ambush your genestealer squads. Just look for things like this in the index. Look for ways to maximize your power level with things starting on the board while minimizing the points that it costs so that you can put those points into more effective units for you. Another example of this is in the Patriarch HQ video. I mentioned starting with a Patriarch on the table rather than deep striking him in with a bunch of genestealers. And I think this is even more valid now because he alone will give you another 7 power level to designate to a deep striking unit that will do its best work in cult ambush. So that Patriarch, 7 power level. A squad of 6 to 10 genestealers is a power level of 8. So that Patriarch by himself is almost enough to allow you to put a decent squad of genestealers in a cult ambush for a turn 1 Alpha Strike. So again, it's just something to consider. So it's a short video. I just want to know, did this help? Did it confuse you more? What are your thoughts on this new power level addition, the changes to Deep Strike, the way it helps, the way it kind of hurts, the way that it's affected the meta as a whole, the way that we are exempted from it? And have you seen maybe some ways of getting around that, of beardily sneaking in a few extra power level here to start on the tabletop, which frees up points and power levels somewhere else to put into cult ambush with your genestealers? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. And I'm wishing you guys the best as we go through this change and adjust to it. And look forward to hearing your thoughts. I'll be talking to you in the comments. And as always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you at the next video.